Yes, we are live on YouTube. We can start now.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Nice to be back. Today we'll cover Canto 2, Chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations. Very wonderful chapter, very enlivening, especially for the children. So in the last few chapters, Lord Brahma has been speaking to Narad Muni how hearing about the Lord, either in his direct dealings with the creation as the Purusha avatars, or his dealings with the world when he himself enters the world as Leela avatars. So, so when we are in the darkness of this material world, Krishna comes out of his compassion to display his pastimes. By hearing of these pastimes, one becomes attracted to Krishna, and one becomes unattracted to hearing mundane things. So Brahma in this chapter is describing to Narada different Leela avatars. Of course, we are not going to cover all of them because time won't permit that. But we will begin with the first one, which is Lord Varahadev. That's the first incarnation. We will hear that in the details of this pastimes in Canto 3, just after Brahma is filling the world with population. After creating Swambhu Manu and his wife Shatarupa, they ask where they should go to start a family, to create progeny. And Brahma says, the earth. But they see that the earth has fallen into the great Garbhodakshai ocean, Garbhodak ocean. And so Brahma was thinking, how is he going to save this earth? And just as he was thinking, Lord Varahadev appeared from his nose. A very unlikely place, right, to appear from. But when one understands that Krishna is everywhere, he can also be in our nostrils, in everyone's nostrils. So what is the difficulty? If he chooses to appear from the nostrils, but what's wonderful about Krishna appearing, that he immediately went into the sky and he became very, very big. And he trumpeted so loudly and attracted all the sages and the demigods. And they started to offer hymns to the Lord. So whatever form the Lord is in, he's very attractive. Even if he's in the form of a hog, he's fully transcendental and wonderful. So as the Lord was pulling the earth out, the demon Hiranyaksha challenged him, and there was a wonderful fight. And all this is described in Canto 3. But Krishna, as Varadev, he killed him with his hands actually, and then pierced him with his tusks. And that started the rivalry between him and Hiranyakashipu, the father of Prahlad. Hiranyakashipu was so angry that he vowed to kill Vishnu. And that, of course, resulted in his own death. Right? So let's go to our first slide, the first incarnation, Varahadev. Lord Brahma said, when the unlimitedly powerful Lord assumed the form of a boar as a pastime, just to lift the planet Earth, which is drowned in the great ocean of the universe, called the Garbhodak, the first demon Hiranyaksha appeared, and the Lord pierced him with his tusk. So Prabhupada explains in the purport very nicely that the Lord, as maintainer of the whole creation of the material world, therefore assumed the gigantic form of a boar with a proportionate snout and picked up the earth from within the water of the Garbhodak. Sri Jayadev Goswami, the great Vaishnava poet, sang as follows: Vasati dashane shikhare dharani tapalagna shashini kalanka kaleva nimagna Keshavadrita Shukhara Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. O Keshava, O Supreme Lord, who have assumed the form of a boar, O Lord, the planet Earth rested on your tusks. and it appeared like the moon engraved with spots. Such is the symptom of an incarnation of the Lord, Prabhupada writes. The incarnation of the Lord is not the concocted idea of fanciful men who create an incarnation out of imagination. The modern creators of many cheap incarnations may take note of the factual incarnations of God as a gigantic boar with a suitable snout to carry the planet Earth. So there's many such wonderful Leela avatars that is being described here. The next one that's described in text 3 that we haven't covered with a slide, but it's about Kapil Muni in the third canto, the son of Karda Muni and Devahuti. And he teaches, it's a wonderful section, the canto 3, and he's teaching Sankhya philosophy. Now, Sankhya means counting. So all the elements are counted and analyzed so that just so we can understand that the soul is different from the material elements and that the soul is spiritual. And a beautiful section, beautiful chapters there. And through meditation, Karda Muni describes the Lord in the heart, and beautiful verses describing the Lord in the heart. How he has cheerful lotus eyes, he has a conch, disgust, and his countenance is very happy at all times. So now in the next slide, we will cover the Lord coming as Dattatreya, Atri's son, to show the power of Vasalya Prem. And this is verse 4. And a wonderful, nice little, nice purport here, where Prabhupada explains how Atri Muni was related with the Lord in Vasalya humor. He wanted the Lord as a son. And because he became perfect, the Lord came as a son, Dattatreya. And Prabhupada writes that how such a relationship between the Lord and his pure devotees are many times mentioned in the Bhagavatam. You may even guess that. For example, Krishna came as the son of Yashoda and Nand Maharaj, as the son of Devaki and Vasudev. Rishabh Dev as the son of King Navi in the 5th canto. So like this, Krishna comes as a child to respond to the love of his devotees. Actually, the Lord is the father of everyone, right? But yet, out of transcendental love and affection, he assumes the role of a son because he actually, Prabhupada explains, he takes more pleasure in becoming a son than a father. Why? Because son is always demanding and the father is always serving and giving. So the devotee comes in the role of always serving. Like Mother Yashoda was and Nand Maharaj were always serving Krishna, always trying to please him and making sure that he was a good son, right? So in this way, the Lord enjoys that relationship better than being a father in Dasya Ras. So some of the other avatars here is the 4 Kumaras. And it was interesting, I thought, because why the Lord incarnated as these 4 Kumaras. And he explains how in the purport, how Brahmaji, how he creates in every millennium, after he lives for 100 years, and after he dies and he is born again, through the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, he has to create again. And so what happens is the knowledge of the absolute truth, it becomes forgotten. It becomes actually erased from the universe. And so in order to bring that knowledge back, otherwise there would be no knowledge, no meaning, Prabhupada writes, to the creation. Creation means to gain knowledge about the absolute truth. Really, that's the purpose of the material creation, is to actually gain knowledge of the absolute truth. Because that knowledge is actually the purpose of the creation, so that living entities can take advantage of that knowledge and go back home, back to Godhead. So to bring that knowledge back, Brahmaji created these 4 sons, and that was fulfilled by the grace of the Lord. And the 4 sons were Sanak, Sanat Kumar, Sanandan, and Sanatan. and they were incarnations of the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. So they are more like Shakti Avesh avatar. They are the potency of the Lord. They have the potency within them of the Lord for knowledge, for disseminating knowledge. And in this way, they explain transcendental knowledge so nicely, so explicitly, that all the sages could assimilate this knowledge without the least difficulty. So that's Shakti Avesh avatar of the Lord. So in our next slide, we will move on to the Lord appearing as Prishni Garbha to Dhruva Maharaj. And that's in verse 8. And we all know the story of Dhruva Maharaj. He was not a pure devotee to start with. But he went, because, why? Because he went to the Lord to ask for material things. But yet, due to his determination, the Lord was so pleased with him that he sent Narad Muni to him to help him, to guide him. What did he want? He wanted the biggest kingdom, greater than his father, Uttanapad, greater than his grandfather, Swambhu Manu, and greater than his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. So just like a child, when he wants something, he gets very adamant. So he went to his mother and said, "Mother, where can I get a kingdom greater than my father and grandfather and great-grandfather?" Mother said, very simple, very devout lady. And she said, "Well, only the Lord can give you that." And he said, "Where is God?" So his motive was to get a kingdom. And of course, she said, "I've heard that he lives in the forest." That's what she heard. And so his motive was to get a kingdom. But because he was so determined, Krishna sent him all facilities. And in this way, he saw the Lord as Prishni Garbha face to face in 6 months. So Prabhupada writes a little bit of his purport here. So the Lord incarnated himself as Prishni Garbha just to satisfy a pure devotee of the Lord. And Prince Dhruva achieved this perfection simply by chanting the hymn mentioned above, after being initiated by another pure devotee, Narada. A serious personality can thus achieve the highest perfection of meeting the Lord and attain his objective simply by being guided by a pure devotee who automatically approaches by dint of one's serious determination to meet the Lord by all means. So we'll move on to our next slide. The Lord came as Prithu Maharaj. He delivered his father, the sinful King Vena. Now, so this is in the 4th canto, very wonderful section of Prithu Maharaj. And it begins with King Anga, who is King Vena's, the future king's father. And King Anga, his wife was death personified. So no one likes death. So the child came out in the mood of his mother, and he was very cruel. Who was this? King Vena. We see, just like we say, cruel death, right? So because death doesn't really care for anybody, it cuts down everybody, right? It doesn't care about our family members. It doesn't care about anything. So Vena, like his mother, was very cruel. So when his father saw that, him like that, he left out of disgust. He says, "What is the use? Even though I have a son, if he's a son like that, is not worth a son." So he left home, and when he left, he went to the forest. And at that time, the thieves became so rampant, so dominant, and they were harassing the people. So the Brahmanas, the sages, they thought, well, better than no king is to have this cruel king on the throne. Hopefully he will change. So they put him on the throne, and yes, the thieves were controlled because they had to meet a very, very cruel, king. So they were all, afraid of him. So there was some law and order in the kingdom. But Vena, as predicted, was a very cruel king, and he stopped all good works. He stopped all sacrifices, and the sages actually tried to change him. They requested him, "Please do everything according to religious principles." But Vena said, "I am God. The king is God. So you should worship me." So the sages got very disgusted. They became very angry, and they killed him with mantras. And then they churned his body, and from his body came Prithu Maharaj. And Prithu Maharaj, like Prahlad, he delivered his father, and there's many wonderful pastimes about him, how he got the earth to give all the necessities for the people that had been depleted due to the reign of this cruel king. So there's wonderful chapters on him. And there's more incarnations that's covered, many incarnations. And one is Rishabdev, who is the son of, like I mentioned earlier, the son of King Nabhi. He was the Lord incarnation of the Lord himself. And his famous son was the eldest of the 100 sons, and that was Bharat Maharaj. And children love that story because he had 3 lives. As a king, he left home. He was on a very high platform, on the Bhava platform, but he somehow or the other, he fell down with a little deer. That the story goes how he rescued that deer from a lion who was nearby, and his mother had just died, in miscarriage. And so Jad Bharat became very attached, and in his next life became a deer. By Krishna's mercy, he remembered everything. And when he gave up his life, his body as a deer, then he became Jad Bharat, and he liberated King Rahugna. This way he went back to Godhead. So Rishabdev's story is there, and his ideal example of how in the end he performed great austerities, and he acted as though he didn't have a body. He didn't have a body, and took no satisfaction or pleasure from his body. So then, of course, we have Hayagriva, the Matsya incarnation that came to save the Vedas. So we'll move on to our next slide, how the Lord came as Kurma, the tortoise incarnation, to help the demigods. That's verse 13. So Kurma incarnation came in order to serve as a resting place for the Mandara mountain when the demons and demigods were churning the ocean to get nectar. It's really a fascinating section of the Bhagavatam. I think it's Canto 8. And it's such a nice, it covers a lot of chapters. And I remember going through this with the children, and it's so fascinating because just in this one pastime, Krishna incarnates 3 times in 3 different forms. It's amazing, in the beginning as I think Ajita, when he's carrying the Mandara mountain on his back, on Garuda's back, and carried all the demons and demigods all on with the mountain to to take it to the ocean where they could churn using Mandara mountain as a pivot, and so then he safely brings them all there, and they begin churning. But then as they begin churning, they realize the mountains was falling this way and that way because it didn't have any resting place. There was no resting place for the Mandara mountain, which was very heavy and very huge. And so Krishna incarnated as Kurma to provide that resting place. And as it scratched his back, he was enjoying that sensation. So that's where Kurma came. And they churned the ocean, and this beautiful pastime of the demigods and demons and which side they took and what happened. And then finally, there's a description about all these different things coming out from the ocean and what they represented. And then Dhanvantari came, and he had this nectar, again, another incarnation, this nectar in his hand, and immediately the demons snatched it. So then Krishna came again as Mohini Murti to lure the demons to give up their nectar so that he could give it to the demigods. And of course, there was a big struggle there, and Rahu, and how he drank it somehow or the other, and Krishna then cut his head off before it went through his whole body. Very, very fascinating story, and a fascinating description of Krishna appearing in different ways. So, and Prabhupada in the purport is so interesting how he talks about, Prabhupada leaves no opportunity to, to criticize this modern scientists who don't want to believe in these versions of the scriptures, about a milk ocean. And this is interesting because we have to give that faith to the children, that these things, even though we cannot see them with our eyes, even the scientists cannot see, and they have powerful instruments. it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And here Prabhupada explains why. So although it's not in our experience, there's milk ocean within this universe. Even the modern scientist accepts that there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of planets hovering even over our heads. And each of them has different kinds of climatic conditions. So that they agree that there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of planets. Srimad Bhagavatam gives much information which may not tally with our present experience. But as far as Indian sages are concerned, knowledge is received from the Vedic literatures as well as Western sages now, right? And the authorities accept without any hesitation that we should look through the pages of authentic books of knowledge, Shastra Chakshurvat. So we cannot deny the existence of the ocean of milk, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, unless and until we have experimentally seen all the planets hovering in space. If you can't see much about what's there, then how can you deny something you cannot see anyway? Since such an experiment is not possible, naturally we have to accept the statement in Srimad Bhagavatam as it is, because it is so accepted by spiritual leaders like Sridhar Swami, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, and others. The Vedic process is to follow in the footsteps of great authorities, and that is the only process for knowing that which is beyond our imagination. The primeval Lord, being all powerful, can do whatever he likes, and therefore his assuming the incarnation of a tortoise or a fish for serving a particular purpose is not at all astonishing. Therefore, we should not have any hesitation whatsoever in accepting the statements of the authentic scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. So through the process of logic, Prabhupada argues how one should accept the Vedic statements even though they have no way to prove it. And Prabhupada does that very logically in many, many purports. So we can pass that on to the children. It makes sense what he's saying. That something that we cannot see with our own eyes doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just like, for example, on a cloudy day, you can't see the sun, but we understand that there is a sun. Once the clouds are gone, the sun will be out, right? We haven't gone to China, but we understand there is a place called China from authorities, right? So in the same way, we have to, by accepting authority, what they say, these people have that chakshusha, they have that shastric vision, they have that grace of the Lord by which they can see these things. So we have to believe in them. And that makes our life a lot easier. Okay, so now we move on to our next slide. Nishingadev came to rescue Prahlad from his demoniac father, verse 14. And we all know the story of Prahlad Maharaj. I don't have to repeat it here. But Prabhupada loves to talk about Prahlad's story. For several months in Vrindavan, he gave lectures on this section, on the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam for many months, because he found it very relevant to today's world. The lessons that we learn from this story, how Hiranyakashipu is the greatest demon history has known, and how Prahlad was the greatest devotee that history has known, right? So what a thesis and an antithesis. This thesis is Lord, is of course Lord Nishingadev. Prahlad, and the antithesis is Hiranyakashipu, right? And they all synthesize together so well. So this way, the children learn so much from this story, the nature of this world and how people act and why they act in the form of his father, and how a devotee lives within this world of people who have demoniac mentality, how to live in this world and to have faith that a devotee will always be protected by the Lord. So in this way, we can hear about the story from Srila Prabhupada's pulpit. He describes the whole story of how Prahlad was saved by Lord Nishingadev and how Hiranyakashipu was torturing his noble son. Okay, and then there's incarnations that appeared to Gajendra, Narayan incarnation, beautiful story in the 8th canto of Gajendra, and the crocodile. nice lessons to learn from, and very wonderful story for children. And they love these kind of stories. Then the appearance of Vamandev, again, very nice section of Bali Maharaj and the appearance of Vamandev. Then the Lord appeared as Dhanavantri, which I just talked about, Parushram, and as Lord Ram, the son of Dashrath, in Canto 9. So we move on to our next slide, how the Lord comes in his original form as Krishna to expand his transcendental glories. And Prabhupada, and here in this, Brahma spends many, many verses describing the different leelas of the Lord in the 10th canto. So I'll read a few verses. I think it'll be nice. When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form with beautiful black hair, and just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one could properly estimate how great he is. So only after going through all the 9 cantos can we understand 10th canto, where Krishna is coming as a sweet little boy with beautiful black hair, but he's doing amazing things. But at the same time, he's acting like a human child, So we don't mistake him for an ordinary child. It's nice to go through the 9 cantos. So by then, one is assumed that one understands. So in the next verse, text 27, there's no doubt about the Lord Krishna as being the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to kill a giant demon like Putana when he was just in the lap of his mother, to overturn a cart with his leg when he was only 3 months old, or to uproot a pair of Arjuna trees so high that they touched the sky when he was only crawling? All these activities are impossible for anyone other than the Lord himself. Then also, when the cowherd boys and the animals drank the poisoned water of the river Yamuna, and after the Lord in his childhood revived them by his merciful glance, just to purify the water of the river Yamuna, he jumped into it as if playing and chastised the venomous Kaliya snake, which was lurking there, his tongue emitting waves of poison. Who can perform such Herculean tasks but the Supreme Lord? So a few more verses on Kaliya. Then in text 30, Brahma talks about Mother Yashoda tying Krishna up, the Damodar Leela, and how the rope was always not enough. And she finally gave up. And Krishna allowed himself to be tied by the love of his mother. Very beautiful Damodar Leela, a lot of wonderful lessons here. And then another time he opened his mouth and the mother found all the universes within his mouth. So seeing this, she was doubtful in her mind, but she was convinced in a different manner of the mystic nature of her son. And of course, another pastime was when Krishna saved Nanda Maharaj from the demigod Varuna. And another pastime was how he saved the cowherd boys from the caves of the mountain that Lord Brahma had kidnapped them, put them there. And also, he expanded himself, Brahma Vimohana Leela. And he also saved the cowherd boys one time when they were placed there by the son of Maya, Danava. So in this way, many, many pastimes have been given here, very interesting pastimes. And of course, the Govardhan Leela pastime has been given here in text 32, how Krishna lifted the Govardhan hill to save his residents from the onslaught of thunder and lightning and hailstorm from Indra. And even though he was a little boy of 7 years old, and he protected the cows and his friends and everyone. And then, of course, the rasa dance in the forest of Vrindavan, with the gopis. And in text 34, 35, he gives so many demons that Krishna killed. That's really nice. And you can go one by one with the children if you like and remember these pastimes or give them in summary, Divida and Balbala and Dhantabakra and, Vidu and Rukmi and Matsya. So many different things so many different people that Krishna killed, Jarasandha. Okay, so we move on to our next slide. Kalki came to deliver sinful people at the end of Kali Yuga. Is yet to come. So there are some pastimes that have already come, some who are here, and some that are yet to come, right? So Kalki, he comes at the end of Kali Yuga, when people's consciousness is no better than animals, Prabhupada explains. And then he comes to show his mercy and how people, even though they want to be vegetarians, they cannot. There's no vegetables around, right? And how people will live underground out of fear of the kings or the leaders who will become very, very treacherous. And they will be living in packs like wolves. So in this way, it's not a very nice picture to think of, right? So we don't want to be around during that time. The fact that we are in Kali Yuga still means we have still a lot of work to do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here in this yuga, right? In Satya Yuga, most of the people are very, very God conscious, and they make it back to Godhead. And this way it diminishes by 1/4 in every yuga. And Dwapar Yuga, Treta Yuga, and then Dwapar Yuga, and in Kali Yuga, as you know, there's mostly, and as Kali Yuga progresses more and more, sinful activities are going on. And so Krishna becomes very merciful in the form of Kalki because he just simply kills. But in this way, he delivers. How Krishna's killing and his protecting is the same. So Krishna is all good, and no matter what he does, is always beneficial for the living entity. So in text 39, Brahma explains how the three different, the creation can be divided into pretty much three parts. Like in the beginning of creation, there's Brahma and the Prajapatis, the great sages. These are in the beginning of creation. And then during the maintenance, there's Lord Vishnu who comes to maintain, and the demigods with controlling powers, and the kings of this material world of different planets, powerful kings. But at the end, there's irreligion, and then Lord Shiva and the atheists are there, full of anger. So Brahma says all of them are different representative manifestations of the energy of the Supreme Lord. So what basically Prabhupada is explaining in this purport, that there's three parts, but then also we have to understand that anything in the material world, whether we in the process of creation, maintenance, or destruction, all is going on only by the power of the Lord. There's a lecture by Prabhupada in this verse, and he says that how the present moment is really is a whole civilization which is governed by a bunch of rascals, he calls them. So that is why Krishna comes as Kalki. So Krishna, not just as Kalki, but he comes as Lord Chaitanya, first of all, to deliver people. So he's canvassing, he's asking them, Prabhupada saying, my dear sons, why are you rotting here? You're my beloved son. I cannot bear to see you rotting. So he comes personally, Prabhupada says in that lecture. He comes personally. And he says that how the rascals say, why is he demanding so much surrender? Even though Krishna is promising that you just surrender and I will take care of you. They don't want to. So Vyasadeva therefore wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam. So real education is how to stop the repeated cycle of birth and death. And he goes on to explain how Krishna comes in so many forms, right? In the form of animals, like Kurma, Varadev, horse, as Hayagriva. He also comes in human form as Lord Ram, as Krishna, as Lord Chaitanya. So whether Krishna is a baby or an adult, whether he's an animal, whatever he is, he's still the Lord. He has the same potency. Just like when he was killing the demon Keshi, he was practically treating him like a toy, right? So this is Krishna. Prabhupada explains how there's so many societies, the bird society, human society, animal society, and there's an incarnation in each of these societies. And each of them instructs in a particular way to give a particular message. So the point to understand here that whatever is going on in this world is only because of Krishna's power. And whatever powers that we are exhibiting, or any big man is exhibiting, or powerful personality is exhibiting, is only a little bit of his own power. So the point that in this chapter that Brahma is trying to teach us, through speaking to Narad Muni, is that how powerful Krishna is. Actually, that is really the main point of this entire canto too, to understand how powerful Krishna is and how important it is to understand his great power. So that moves on where Brahma gives a hint of how we can see him. And that leads to our next slide. The Lord is limitless, powerful, and cannot be understood. So that's in verse 40 and 41. Who can describe the prowess of Vishnu? Even the scientist who might have counted the particles of the atoms of the universe cannot do so, because it is he only who, in his form of Trivikrama, moved his leg effortlessly beyond the topmost planet, Satyaloka, up to the neutral stage of the three modes of material nature, and all were moved. They may do wonderful things, but can they become Vamandev and move his leg to cover the entire universe in one step? Can they do that? No, right? So this is Krishna. This is so powerful. 41. Neither I, Brahma is saying, nor all the sages born before you, know fully the omnipotent personality of Godhead. So what can others who are born after us know about him? Even the first incarnation of the Lord, named Shesha, has not been able to reach the limit of such knowledge, although he's describing the qualities of the Lord with 1,000 faces. Prabhupada explains that even if you were to count all the atoms in this universe, but just think there's millions of universe. Are we going to count the atoms of all the millions of universe? So Brahma is basically giving our inability to understand Krishna. Even Brahma is saying he cannot understand. Even Shesha, who has 10,000 mouths, he also continues to expand his glories without any cessation. So that takes us to our next slide. Who are the great souls who know him, and what is the process? So here Brahma is going to mention more names. Why? Because he wants us to know that anyone who's attached to Krishna can know the science of God. This gives us hope and faith, isn't it? One can know God by the grace of God. This is the process. So if anybody is very powerful, in order to understand him, he has to allow himself to be understood by that person. Right? For example, if a child wants to know about his father's childhood, he has to wait for when his father wants to tell him. So basically, he has to wait for his father's compassion to want to tell him, right? So something which is beyond us, we really cannot understand on our own. We have to wait for that person to reveal it. So this is the point of Brahma explaining the vastness of the greatness of the Lord, so that we can understand that he is far beyond our material intelligence. We could probably, if there were a whole room full of seeds, we could, how can we count them, right? Maybe by calculating 1 square inch and then multiplying that. Right? But it's impossible to count everything within one universe. So Prabhupada goes on to explain and hammer this point. So we should understand that Krishna is so powerful and we are so tiny. And this is just, Prabhupada writes, this is just his material potency. What to speak of the spiritual potency, which is 3/4 of his creation, which is unlimited, omnipotent, inconceivable. What does the word inconceivable means? It means impossible to understand, right? Until the inconceivable explains himself or herself, right? So the process of bhakti is a process of evoking the grace of the Lord. And then Prabhupada, Brahma goes on to explain in verses 43 to 45 who these people are. And he's got a very long list of the people who actually know Krishna. So there is hope, right? And he's named many, many wonderful personalities in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We will be hearing about gradually as you go through Bhagavatam, you will hear about Prahlad Maharaj, Swambhu Manu, that's in third canto, and then his wife Shatarupa, Priyavrata, fourth canto, Thanapad, again fourth canto, Akuti, Devahuti, and Prastuti, again the fourth canto, Prachina Barhi, Ribu, Anga, the father of Vena, Maharaj Dhruva, Ishwaku, Ela, Muchukunda, Maharaj Janak, Gadi, Raghu, Ambarish, Sagar, Nahusha, Mandhata, so many names here. And how do they know? How do they know the Lord? Certainly not by, Prabhupada writes, certainly not by mental speculation, nor by any attempt by dint of limited instruments of knowledge. By the limited instruments of knowledge, either the senses or the material instruments like microscopes and telescopes, one cannot even fully know the Lord's material potencies, which are manifested before our eyes. For example, there are many millions and billions of planets far, far beyond the scientist's calculation. But these are only the manifestations of the Lord's material energy. What can the scientist hope to know of the spiritual potency of the Lord by such material efforts? Mental speculations by adding some dozens of ifs and maybes cannot aid the advancement of knowledge. On the contrary, such mental speculations will only end in despair by dismissing the case abruptly and declaring the non-existence of God. So it ends up in saying, oh, there's no God. So the sane person therefore ceases to speculate on subjects beyond the jurisdiction of his tiny brain. And as a matter of course, he tries to learn to surrender unto the Supreme Lord, who alone can lead one to the platform of real knowledge. So Prabhupada is saying, give up the path of experimental knowledge. One should gain knowledge by surrendering unto the Lord and by acknowledging the authority of the persons mentioned herein. The Lord is unlimited, and by the grace of Yoga Maya helps the surrendered soul to know him proportionately with the advance of one's surrender. And then in the next verse, Prabhupada says how one should surrender unto the pure devotees of the Lord. And by surrendering to the pure devotees of the Lord, even the most unqualified will become qualified. Anybody becomes qualified. Because people ask, Prabhupada explains how people ask, what do you mean? What does it mean to surrender unto the Lord? So it means surrender to the pure devotee. Yes, Krishna is very far away from us. It's difficult to connect with him. But we can connect with the pure devotees of the Lord and take instruction from them. And Prabhupada says, you can surrender immediately without delay, and that begins his spiritual life. The bona fide representative of God is as good as God himself. Or in other words, the loving representative of the Lord is more kind and more easy to approach. A sinful soul cannot approach the Lord directly, but such a sinful man can very easily approach a pure devotee of the Lord. And if one agrees to put himself under the guidance of such a devotee, of the Lord, he can also understand the science of God and can also become like the transcendental pure devotee of the Lord and thus get his liberation back to Godhead, back home for eternal happiness. So that moves on to our next slide, which I think is the last slide. Affection between the Lord and his devotee is without cessation and misery. This is, I thought, was a very nice point that I wanted to bring out, that is explained in the purport. What is this? What is so special between the affection between the Lord and the devotee? Because we constantly hear about that. How the Lord, the most powerful Lord, becomes controlled by the love of his devotee. So, what is this affection? We generally understand affection by the way we feel affection for each other, especially within the family. We have great affection, right? So this is what we understand as affection. So Prabhupada in this purport, he explains what is this affection between the Lord and the devotee that is without cessation, without any misery, and is continuous. And it brings the devotee to a point that he finds everything else useless in his life. So here, Prabhupada explains in the purport, the Supreme Lord is this, in the purport of this verse 47. Okay, the Supreme Lord is a supreme soul of everything, and therefore, in the supreme conception, affection is realized. The concept of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there's some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the mature world is full of limitations. When the personality of God is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He's not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he's the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities because he's the super soul or Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. As such, there's an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in the mature world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken, thus, there's no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangements and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. So the people that we have affection for in this world is really the affection of one's soul to another soul. And we have some examples in the scriptures and in Bhagavatam about Maharaj Chitraketu. He never had a son. He had like 10 million wives, but he never had a son. So finally he approached, the sages and they, they did a sacrifice by which he got a son. And then, as you know, if you've heard the story, the son dies actually because out of envy, the other queens who did not give birth to this child, who felt neglected by the king, they poisoned him. And when the king and the queen, the natural mother of the baby, when they saw that, the whole kingdom was enveloped in sadness and wailing and crying. Can you imagine after getting a child after such a long time and having so many wives but not having a child, right? So the two sages came to give instruction to Chitraketu and his wife, and they gave amazing instruction. I think it was Angira Muni and Narad Muni, and they explained to him that if you think the boy to be the body, the muscle, whatever, he's right here. So actually, what they were saying that the affection that they had for the son was from the soul to the soul. And because it's in a material tinge, in a material relationship, there's so much misery, right? Because it's broken. Ultimately, it's broken. But happiness in the spiritual world, it means that the soul, this love is never broken. And Prabhupada writes how it also means that the soul has a personality. It's not void, it has a personality. Otherwise, one cannot feel that happiness. So, so Prabhupada writes in text 48, in such a transcendental state, there's no need of artificial control of the mind, mental speculation, or meditation as performed by the jnanis and yogis. One gives up such processes as the heavenly King Indra forgoes the trouble to dig a well. Indra, Prabhupada explains, the god of rain, why would he need to dig a well for water? Why would he take that trouble? He already has ample access to water. Right? So a person who has achieved this pure bhakti, this pure love of God, what has he got to do with the other processes? Nothing, right? So Prabhupada takes great length to explain this example of Indra. He's saying that those who are factually engaged in the loving service of the Lord have attained the ultimate goal of life. And for them, there's no need of mental speculation to find out the true nature of God or his activities. Neither do such devotees have to meditate upon the imaginary or real identity of the Lord, because they are factually engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The pure Lord's pure devotees have already achieved the results of all the other processes. Okay, and there's a few ending verses here where Brahma is speaking to Narada, again explaining how the Lord is the supreme master of everything, summarizing that point, that how he's the ultimate benefactor. And he says in text 50, my dear son, I've now explained in brief the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is creator of the manifested world. Without him, Hari, the Lord, there are no other causes of the phenomenal and numeral existence. O Narada, this science of God, Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken to me in summary by the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, and it is spoken as the accumulation of his diverse potencies. Please expand this science yourself. Please describe the science of God with determination and in a manner by which it will be quite possible for the human being to develop transcendental devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Hari, the super soul of every living being and the summum bonum, source of all energies. The Lord's activities in association with the different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. So this is where the chapter ends. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and we'll give it over to Rati Prishta Mataji to explain the activities in the guidebook.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Mataji, can you make her co-host again because she joined back?
Okay, sure. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for your wonderful presentation. And there was a power cut, so I had to, in between, I had to leave and then re.
Okay.
So I will quickly present the, I will share the slide for guidebook. Is my voice audible?
Yes, it is.
All right. Yeah. So the chapter begins with the story summary. As always, it is very, very conversational style, helping the children to imagine what is happening, and beautiful pictures are also there so that younger ones can color the pictures while the elder ones are engaged more into thinking about higher order questions and discussing and debating on them and doing other activities which require deep concentration. So the younger ones can be engaged simultaneously while coloring these pictures. And this story, first the context is given in first paragraph, and then the main story begins with, the context is developed first. Narada was a meek and humble sage, obedient and true to his dear father. He was Lord Brahma's favorite son. Why? The Lord had many a child, yet here sat a gentle, sweet Narada on a platform lower than his father, legs crossed, head, neck, and back aligned, as if the nectar he was about to hear required a clear pathway from the ears down to the innermost chamber of the heart. So the entire context is given, and then from the next paragraph, the story actually begins. One day began Lord Brahma, edging forward on his lotus flower with a deep voice filled with mysteries. When planet Earth was drowning in the nether regions of Garbhodak Ocean, our Lord, who maintains this material world, transformed into a boar with huge tusks. A boar? Interrupted curious Narada. Had he heard his father right? So this way the story is so built up so nicely and in an imaginative manner that children will really love, enjoy reading this story summary and hearing to it. And then there are key messages always which help children to memorize the important key learnings from the chapter, then discuss over them, apply them in their lives. Then we have understanding the story based questions, which help children to again have a quick understanding of the entire chapter, and higher order thinking questions, which will help the teachers as well as the students to be to enter into deep into the philosophy. And these also offer certain points wherein discussions and debates can be engaged while we are reading the translations with children. And then come activities. So this chapter again offers very innovative, creative, and wonderful activities, beginning with action activities. First activity is Leela Avatar Challenge. Herein, children can be divided, either two children can play or they can be divided into two teams, and then each player has to think about some incarnations and give some clues to the opponent about the particular incarnation that he has thought about. So, like for example, if they are thinking about Lord Vamana, so uh, um, these clues can be given. Krishna came to protect the demigods from a powerful demon. So, if the opponent is able to answer on the first clue, then then they get 3 points. If they answer on the second clue, they get 2 points. If on the third clue, they get 1 point. If the opponent is not able to answer on the third clue also, then they will get the other person will get 2 points. So very interesting way to help children memorize all the Leela avatars and the basic features of each of them. Children really love playing such games. And then this is avatar memory game, another very fun way to help children memorize all the names of different avatars. So here in children, this is a line which meaning the game begins like this. Every child has to start with, when Lord Krishna incarnated, he came as Varaha. Then other child will add one more incarnation to the line. When Lord Krishna incarnated, he came as Varaha, then Kapila. Then the third child will add another incarnation. So like this the game goes on, and the child who can say out the maximum number of avatars in the same sequence will be the winner. So like this. And then there are some artistic activities. Herein my daughters had the privilege to have their friends along while doing these activities. So this is a stained window hanging activity, wherein children have to take any one of the incarnation, and they have to cut out a boundary of that incarnation, like tortoise and fish and any other incarnation that they can think of. And then they have to paste a colorful cellophane paper behind. It looks such wonderful. When they were cutting, just the cutting of it was not appearing as wonderful, but when they applied the cellophane, they were very happy and it was really shining. And then they decorated it with pearls and beads and tilak. So like this, children can be engaged doing artistic activities from Srimad Bhagavatam. Then this is one superhero activity. Like all children are fond of cartoons, so all of them have their own superheroes like Superman, Spider-Man, Doraemon, Wonder Woman. So like this, So children here can be encouraged to think about Krishna as our superhero, who is more powerful than any of these so-called materialistic, meaning cartoons heroes which children are fond of. So then children can either create some badges or some posters of their superhero Krishna. And if the children are elder, they can even create some comic pages, some TV advertisement, some short video like this. So this is also one of the preaching activity which can be done with children. And then there are critical thinking activities. Herein children are allowed to go to think deeply about the chapter wherein we have Dashavtar investigation, wherein children are supposed to meaning get a copy of Dashavtar Shrota, which is written by Srila Jayadev Goswami. This is also available in video form, so children can sing that song or listen to that song and then compare the song's version and what is the version given in the book, and then they can sing together, and while reading the shlokas they can sing that shrotra along. So this is another way of remembering these avatars. And Supreme Lord's qualities. Here again, this is another critical thinking activity wherein children are supposed to, meaning that there are some qualities that are given, and they are supposed to tell whether these qualities are there in which of the incarnations. So like compassion towards his devotees and protecting his devotees, wrath for evildoers and irreligious persons. So they gave names of Narsingh Deva, Boar incarnation, like this. So sharing of transcendental knowledge to help elevate the common people. So like this, they are giving Kapila as an incarnation. So, and then they have to think whether there are some incarnation which are showing more than one of these qualities, which are equally prominent. And then there is one writing activity of which describes the glories of Bhakti Yoga. Herein, children have to identify some character from the Bhagavatam, and they have to kind of think how this character has done, has tried to approach Lord, and what is the benefit that they have got by approaching Lord like this, and through some difficult measure like Ashtanga yoga or mystic yoga or meditation for thousands of years like this. So and then they have to think of some other ways which a bhakta, which from Bhagavatam only, which bhakt or bhakti yogi has tried, and what are can bhakt also get the same benefit by doing the devotional activities. So this was a brief summary of it. And then this very wonderful activity wherein three incarnations are jumbled up. The various features related to three incarnations are jumbled up, namely Lord Narsimha, Kapila Dev, and Krishna. So they have to identify the words which match with those incarnations, and they have to color accordingly, three different colors. So this also they enjoyed thoroughly. And then this activity is guess the incarnation by looking at these scenes or pictures that have been given. So this was also very interesting, wherein children have to guess just by looking at the picture. They have to guess and then write few words about what that that particular incarnation has done with reference to these pictures. So this was also very interesting, instigating their thought. And looking at the last picture, they both it was to Bhagwan Ram, he lifted Govardhan. So this is how children enjoy all these activities. And then these are some of the introspective activities. Here in this is bringing about the reflective dimension in children. Now, like in verse 50, Prabhupada is saying the basic reason for our being conditioned is that we are trying to lord it over the material world. So here they have to think like as if they are servants of Krishna, and they have to experience being servants in a temple, or for half a day, and see how much enjoyable that activity or that experience is. And then these writing activities, reading and comprehension, again very interesting. After getting the key summary of the chapter, they have to say the things that they have found out in this chapter, the things that they found interesting and why, and the questions that they still have. And then there is this advertising Krishna. Herein they have to create a small leaflet, 3-page leaflet about Krishna and advertise. So entire process is also described. Before they start, they have to think about the layout, and then design a logo, and then brief contents. So all details have been given which can help children to prepare this leaflet. Then there are connecting words which are also related to the chapter. And sequencing activity always helps children to develop a proper sequence of the chapter. And then there are spelling errors, keywords activity, in which children have to identify the keyword, define it, and write synonym and antonym for it. This another interesting activity of fact file from the paragraph. It is a comprehension based activity wherein child has to identify the name of the avatara mentioned, his parents name, uh, what was the amazing thing that he did, and why it is important actually to mention the names of the parent, which was very clearly mentioned in the purport. So this again is a reinforcement of that. And then jumble up words, state true or false with following with inferences, wherein children also have to say whether why they are agreeing or disagreeing with the statement. And then there are these um, word search, and then finally the answers to all the questions, understanding story, sequencing, keywords, fact file. Every answer is provided, jumble up words, and the younger kids word search. So thank you all very much for the patient listening. Today there is no light, so I cannot see anything other than the laptop. But I hope the presentation made sense. And thank you all very much. Now we open the session for the questions. You can all ask questions now. I will change the settings so that you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Rati Prishna. Very nice explanation and presentation. Thank you. Very wonderful.
Yeah, Kalindini Sundari Mataji, please, you can unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mata.
Hare Krishna, Mata. Please accept my humble obeisances. Mata, I have a question. You're talking about this like Kali Yuga, like Kalki about to come, and then there is nothing, just the meat to eat. So, Mata, there will be no devotee that time. Mata, no devotee to preach.
Well, I'm sure. I don't know. There's going to be very few, because it's going to be very difficult. But by then, things have degraded so much. But there's always, in every time, there's always devotees. So it's very difficult to believe that there won't be devotees. Because if Krishna is coming, his devotees must be there. Who the most compassionate devotees, who stay back to help, the most fallen. Okay. No, I'm sure, because there's always going to be, in every yuga, in every time, there will be always devotees. The Lord's devotees will be there. Okay. I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Okay, so we can.
Yeah, Mataji, I'll just unmute her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mata. Yeah, and Mother, one question which always bothered me, but I don't know. I just want to keep clearing that. like I always hear this, because we are in the spiritual world, and because for we want to enjoy like ourselves. That's the reason we are in this material world. And question is that once in scripture telling one you go to back to God, that you're never going to come here.
Mhm.
But other side, I also hear that when the living entity turn the face back to Krishna, he come to this material world. So my question is that one side is not we're not coming after going back to God. There is no chance to come unless if Krishna
Yeah.
want to.
I understand your question, Kalindi Sundari. Yeah, so in other words, one doesn't come to be here, one doesn't fall down. What Prabhupada is saying, that having learned our lessons for lifetimes, we've been here for lifetimes, and when we finally go back, we would never want to come back. In other words, we've learned our lessons, so we never come back to this material world. But at the same time, Krishna can choose specific devotees to come and preach here. That's up to the devotee and Krishna between them. Okay. So like Prabhupada, he came from the spiritual world to give us this knowledge. He's not a man of this world. He came from the spiritual world, you see. So sometimes Krishna will select people to come and give this knowledge. And when the time was done, then Prabhupada said, then Krishna didn't want to wait. Prabhupada had to go, you see. So he, even though one feels that there's so much more to do, but when Krishna decides the time is up, just even with devotees who have passed away in recent years, they, much as they had so many things to do and we needed them, right? We needed them, but yet when Prabhupada decides that it's time to move on to something else, then they have to leave. So they don't conflict with each other. Don't conflict with each other. One does leave this material world for good, but at the same time, one can come back. Krishna also desires one can come back to serve here.
So okay, yes, continue, Mata.
No, I'm done. Yeah.
So Mata, so that is for the pure devotee, they coming for preaching. Okay, that is one thing. But what about the like me? Like if I go, then again I have to come back because I
No. So Prabhupada addressed that point. He said, for us, the prayer should be, please, I want to go to the spiritual world. He says, this is no place for a gentleman or a gentlewoman.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, for our level, we just pray to Krishna so that we can go to his abode, to the spiritual world. Not,
and then we
not at the platform. Yeah. So that platform is very, very high. The platform of Prahlad. In that verse, he says that, I don't want to be selfish, I want to be here to deliver the fools and rascals, right? So that consciousness is very, very advanced, very, very advanced. And we can't imitate that consciousness. So Prabhupada gave us a way. He said, for us, the prayer is, Krishna, we want to go to your abode. We want to go to the spiritual world. We should understand the material world and the nature of the material world. And while living here in a proper way, in a gentleman way, we prepare for a path back to Godhead. While doing our prescribed duties, while serving Krishna, pleasing Krishna and his devotees, and following whatever Prabhupada has given us, we go back, we please the pure devotee. Okay.
So if I after go there, if again this kind of thing come that okay, turn face, then again we have to come here again.
No, that's what I'm saying. Prabhupada said, once we go back, we won't come back. Okay. That is a guarantee. That's a guarantee. You don't come back again. This is
this desire not going to come that.
No.
I want to enjoy.
No.
Okay.
Okay, there's 3 more participants who want to ask questions. Thank you, Kalindi Sundari. This is a very sincere question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Archana Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I have always had this question. So Srila Prabhupada writes that the 10th canto is very confidential and we need to go over the first 9 cantos to reach there. At the same time, we also have the Krishna book, which we even encourage kids to read as a beginner book. So how do we understand this? Like, because it has the same pastimes of the 10th canto, but at the same time, like, I've always had this question. So.
Yeah, yes, very good question, Archana, because Krishna, Prabhupada actually, he wrote Krishna book quite early in his, quite early. In fact, one of the earlier books before he actually started translating the other cantos. And the reason is because he didn't know how long he was going to live. And he wanted to give the summum bonum, but the way Prabhupada gives it in the Krishna book is just so amazing. His purports are, his explanations of the pastimes, all put us in the right frame of mind. In other words, when we go through the 10th canto, through the Krishna book, there's absolutely no way we're going to misunderstand, having read through Prabhupada's Krishna book. So yes, we can read Krishna book and we can distribute Krishna book, because the devotees were distributing Krishna book on the streets, and even today they distribute Krishna book on the streets. Because, the idea is that, yes, we are not qualified to hear of this intimate pastimes of the Lord, yet, but through the mouths of the pure devotee, we become qualified. Only when we hear through the mouths of a pure devotee do we become qualified. But generally, as a rule, we should go through all the cantos. In other words, the point is being made that in order to appreciate Krishna's intimate pastimes, we have to first understand how great Krishna is, who he actually is, through the earlier 9 cantos. Especially the first 2 cantos really puts us in the right perspective, isn't it? So much we are hearing about Krishna's power. The entire 2nd canto is all about that. And this is the lotus feet of Krishna, cantos 1 and 2. And as we get further into the later cantos, it becomes more and more, it becomes more and more deeper. So it does require more qualification. And that's why this process of going systematically is recommended, because it represents different parts of the Krishna's body. So as we understand, and 10th canto is like the smiling face of Krishna. So yes, we sometimes have to do that. And so sometimes we, may have to do the 10th canto, but as long as we understand that this is very, the smiling face of Krishna, and we have to be very careful in how we present it to the children, So it's always good, even if you're doing the 10th canto, is to always, for the teacher or the parent, to understand it through the Krishna book really well, The purports given there are also very good. They're given by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. But it's always good to read the Krishna book before explaining to the children from the 10th canto. Okay.
Radhika Mataji.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Mataji, my question is more general in nature, not specific to this chapter. I was considering buying dolls for my child, which are based on deities. So Krishna dolls and Jagannath dolls, they're all available now. But I was a bit concerned if it is appropriate to do that, or if it is better to connect them to the deities directly rather than I was just worried if this is going to create some kind of idol worship mentality. I'm a little not sure if it's the right way.
No. It won't create any idol worship mentality. Just like, we in the Karmi world also, children are given dolls, right? And they think that doll is a real baby, and they like to feed the doll and they put it to rest, and they actually think it's a real person, right? In the same way, when children play with these Krishna dolls and other dolls, they actually feel that Krishna is there. It's real for them, and they have the doll and they want to feed the doll and dress the doll. They have different colored turban cloths to dress. The only thing I've found that one has to be a little careful, because when children are very small, then they tend to throw, on the ground, these dolls and mistreat them, right? I've seen that again and again, and that's the problem. So what I would do, just my personal humble, opinion would be that to take these dolls and to make a little altar for the child and put the dolls there, so that instead of deities, which is going to be very hard for them to manage, they have these dolls, okay, and it's their own little altar. And then they, do different things with the doll, like put the doll, give food to the doll, and in this way they are serving Krishna, yeah, because in Bhagavatam, Prabhupada describes stalwarts like Parikshit Maharaj, Uddhava, who grew up playing with Krishna dolls. So this is bona fide because our own acharyas, they've done that, right? So it's not like it's going to be any form of idol worship at all. These are forms of the Lord. So how can it be idol worship? No. But yet I feel that when we see the child throwing that doll on the ground and smashing it and all that, that has to be protected. And if the child is too young to do that, then maybe giving a doll at that age is not a good idea, and just waiting till the doll can really appreciate, till the child can appreciate those dolls as well, because we hear of these acharyas doing different things like bathing and dressing the doll and being so absorbed. Prabhupada writes how Uddhava was so absorbed in playing with his doll that he would not hear his mother call him for lunch. And these are, of course, great souls, right? So we have to be careful on that point, because I've seen that, and it's not good for children to do that. And if they don't know anything better. So as parents, we need to be careful about that. And one way would be to put them on the altar, their own little altar. Okay. Then as they get older, as they get older, because I've seen that in many cases, I personally have experience with parents struggling with this point, and also going through different levels where they feel, okay, maybe I can introduce deities to them. And they come to be like, like a 4.5-year-old child is ready for maybe a little Gaur-Nitai deities on her altar, maybe 5 inches or 4 inches Gaur-Nitai, very small, and just her own little altar. And then she's playing this game, this service. She develops a service mood, right? Because she's got her own little kitchen. I know one girl who does all that, so I'm speaking from experience. And she has her own little kitchen where she cooks and she brings the food there and she offers, and she's just, every morning she's absorbed in doing that. And it's her own little altar with little Gaur-Nitai deities. So at some point, the children will graduate into that. Now, Gaur-Nitai is very, very merciful, So, and we have to again be careful that she's not throwing them around or doing anything, disrespectful. But if she simply has them on the altar and she is offering food and she puts them to rest every day, she decorates them, with the mother being around and supervising, helping her, then it's fine. See? So you have to see different levels, where and when can you introduce them. Okay. If she's still not quite ready for Gaur-Nitai deities, then you should do dolls, okay? And then gradually you will see that she's graduated to this point. And then she's doing simple same things. And they become so adamant they want to cut up an apple. If whatever the mother offers or father offers on their own altar, she wants a similar plate, a little plate for her, right? And she has got all these kitchen things, a mixie and everything. And every morning, I know this one child who it's a ritual with her. And she makes that food, and it's all, she's getting different things from the mother, and doing the same thing that her mother is doing, but in her own little kitchen. But she understands that she can't have big quantities like her mother. Her brain is saying, and she's like 4 years old, like that. And she's doing all these amazing things, and her mood is so devotional all morning, So children need that, So it may be just offering food and decorating them. It may not be bathing, right? It may be too much for her at this point. So that's okay. Just let her introduce her to that part. The idea is to associate with Krishna, and in what way can they associate? But also developing a quality of patience, for the parents, because we can't expect them to be the most perfect. And we have to develop and be patient and gradually make them aware of Krishna at every stage, every part of their life during the day. Okay?
Thank you, Mataji. This was my main concern. Like, eventually they may throw things around and keeping them clean. He couldn't just put it into the machine like we throw our other toys.
No, we shouldn't do that. If they're throwing the dolls around, that's not proper.
Yeah.
And you
And
have
then
to,
eventually when we introduce them to the deities, I was wondering how do we explain the difference? Because we are explaining, Prabhupada tells us how the deity is the authorized form.
it
But
will
then
come
there's
automatically. It will come automatically because they're watching you serve your deities. You see,
okay.
they're learning from direct observation. They know it's serious, and you have to point that out to them. There will be a
Thank you,
little
Mataji.
difference between dolls. Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any other question anybody has?
Okay.
That's all, Mataji.
Okay, this is a great time to end the class. Thank you all for joining in, and we'll hear from you next week. Hare Krishna.